Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Cannabis Live. I'm your host, Craig Aronoff, along with Barton Morris from the Cannabis Legal Group, and welcome to episode 19 of our Cannabis Live Facebook Live posts. Today we're going to be talking about medical marijuana safety compliance facilities, something that is going to be new and different in the state of Michigan as far as some things we have not seen before in this industry. We'd encourage you to like us, share us, ask us questions throughout today's live post, and we'd be happy to answer those. So, get into safety compliance facilities. This is a part of the Medical Marijuana Facility Licensing Act. It's actually one of the licenses that will be offered, and one of the very important things about this license is it's the only one you can get if you're interested in participating in a facility license for safety compliance. You can't participate in a different area in the industry.
Right. So if you want to be, so first of all, a safety compliance facility is a facility or a laboratory that has the obligation to do various tests on the medical marijuana that's going to be sold to patients. Those various tests will include potency testing, specifically for many different cannabinoids, including THC, CBD, perhaps THCA, which is acid form, CBDA, and other cannabinoids as the state may require. So that's potency testing because, of course, patients want to know how much THC is going to be not only in the flower as far as the percentage, but even more significantly, how much is going to be in a dose of a product that they may consume otherwise, whether that be topically or through eating. So that will be potency testing. Next, there'll be pesticide testing. We're talking about an agricultural product. We're talking about the fact that growers do use pesticides in order to control pests. But there's going to be banned pesticides that the state is going to identify that shall not be used. And if the cannabis is tested positive for these banned pesticides, then it's not going to be able to be used. And so pesticide testing is important. A couple other ones that I know of is going to be microbiological testing, and for specifically mold and mildew, and for different fungus like salmonella. These things are microbiological testing. And then residual solvents might be the last category. A residual solvent will be present in THC extracted products, and as many people know, the manner in which that, or the solvents that are used to extract the THC often will then be present, could be present, and if it's present to a degree that it's too much, the state's going to identify in parts per million how much is too much. Then that's going to be, if it's tested positive, then that's not going to be allowed to be placed into the market either. Those solvents could be like CO2 or different alcohols that people use processors use to extract the THC. So that's why they call it a safety compliance facility, because they want to ensure that the cannabis that's being sold is safe.
Yeah, and so, as we come into this commercial market, we're going to see different areas where growers have the flower and they're going to be selling it to processors and dispensaries, and then processors will be creating extracts and creating products, whether it's food or pens or topicals, and in each area, each product that's going to be put on these shelves is going to be batch tested to ensure that it's safe. So we want to ensure the growers are doing their job within their regulatory requirements and making safe product for processors to use. But even after the processors, produce their product for the shelves, that's where it has to be tested so the end user and the dispensary know exactly what's in this product. If you're somebody that's looking for a specific ratio of CBD to THC makeup, say it's a 5-to-1 ratio because that helps a specific need that you have, what we're going to see is that when the manufacturer, the processor says this is what it is, we're going to have verification of that. And we're going to also know that it was safe, and that it's going to be labeled, and we're going to know what all the ingredients are, and there's going to be certification from this safety compliance facility, independent arbiter of what is actually in this product. And I think that's very important because in today's market, and this is part of the defects of the caregiver-patient model, is we truly don't know what these caregivers are doing to grow their products, grow their flower.
Yeah, let's actually talk about that. What's going on today,
Sure.
Where we don't have mandatory testing? Sorry, I mean,
No,
off.
please. I think it dovetails right into the present. And so
Yeah.
we've often talked in these Facebook Lives about how it's the past, the present, and the future. And really, that's where we are today, is a situation where we don't know what's on the shelves. And the labs aren't even being asked to truly offer a test that will be available next year.
There are many dispensaries that are in operation right now, and this is August of 2017. And these dispensaries, I think most of them, or these cities call them caregiving dispensaries, because they're caregivers, presumably distributing their products to their patients, sometimes to other patients. Nevertheless, they are selling cannabis that it doesn't have to be tested for all of those things. Now, I did meet with people from Iron Laboratories. They're a chemical testing medical marijuana laboratory in Walled Lake. They've been in operation since 2011, I believe. I was speaking to Howard Lutz yesterday, and I did record it, unfortunately, and I was planning on putting it into our show today, but I couldn't get it done, and I'm going to get it done and put it in a future show. But what he was telling me is that most people right now, the testing that they're interested in, they're only really, I mean, when I say people, dispensaries, perhaps growers, unfortunately, what they're most interested in is only potency testing. They're only interested in how much THC is in their medicine, because when they can identify that a certain amount, especially a high level, is within their product, then that sells better, because people evidently want to have higher pharmacologically active THC contents in order to get a better high. And unfortunately, that's not the only testing that's available, as I said earlier. And perhaps many caregivers, growers, and dispensaries are not focusing on the other types of testing that ensures that the cannabis is safe. Spider mites is a big problem, just these pests, and the pesticides used to eliminate them. And mold is a big problem as well, and the residual solvents. These are things that should not be in a product that's sold. But unfortunately, the dispensaries that are in operation now, many of them, not all of them, I believe our client Green Cross gets their products tested, their flowers tested, in order to ensure that it's safe. But there's others that don't, and that's important. I mean, this is medicine that is intended for patients for medical use, and so having it tested for safety is important. That's not mandatory right now.
Yeah, right now, what I think, and it's very fair to say that it's really done for this potency for purposes of trying to create a market. So, they know at $5 a gram it has a certain percentage of THC versus a $15 a gram, product that might have a higher potency, and therefore it justifies a higher cost for purposes of the counter sale. But this is done purely for the monetary gain, as well as, trying to ensure the people they're working with are safe. A lot of these caregiver centers are, having donations from multiple different places, and ultimately, this model and this concern, as we go into the license phase over the next year, is something that has been addressed by the legislature, and that brings us to where we're at in the present. The MMFLA requires that these products to be into the marketplace are going to have new testing and requirements that are going to be consistent between all the dispensaries. So if you're going into a provision center, if you're going into, purchase medicine up in Traverse City at one that ultimately will be licensed versus one in Detroit or Battle Creek or wherever, ultimately you're going to find that the same requirements will be required at all of these dispensaries for purposes of their tested product. So there's going to be consistency in the marketplace. You'll be able to also know that there's safety behind that. And, and what that is really going to do is we're going to start now. This is where we're getting to a point where we're talking to operators about their standard operating procedures and getting into a point in time where these growers understand that it's going to be part of the cost of doing business and the operational cost of doing business to have their products properly tested and verify what they're doing. And the same will be true of the processors, of course, because they're going to be literally putting it on labels. And so, as this transition happens, we got to get away from the caregiver-patient belief in the way that these caregiver centers are operating, and start to look at it more from a commercial enterprise, because it's really going to be beyond just their little bubble that they're operating in today in terms of their business and the things around it. They're going to have a lot of other industry partners that they're going to be working with around the state. And the association really has to ensure for the safety for the public and the confidence of the public that these safety measures are in place and everyone's happy to have them, because that ensures the public safety, and we get the confidence of the community to believe that it's a good thing for them, rather than maybe some of the pushback right now that we see that's more related to the uncertainty. So this is an area that creates certainty, and that's one of the best things about this license.
I want to take a moment to identify the website that you see at the top of your page, which is our Cannabis Legal Group municipalities page.
Yes.
It's been really popular. We have what we've done is we've created a place where people can go and look and see the most up-to-date information regarding the municipalities that have taken some action on the Facilities Licensing Act, which is necessary, as many people know, in order to be able to get a license through the state of Michigan. If you want to operate as a grower, processor, or provisioning center, you have to get a state license. Before such, you have to get a municipal license. And so many people, the biggest question I think that we get is what cities are available. And so we've put that on a page that we update on a regular basis, and it's been really popular.
Yeah, and we really appreciate everybody's help with that too. I mean, as much as we've had dialed into a lot of different communities ourselves, it's really a group effort to ensure that what we're seeing is really up to date. There's planning commission meetings and town board meetings and city council meetings daily almost, and this topic is becoming more and more prevalent around the state. And so, we do invite, and you'll see it on the page, feedback, and also, you'll find that we try to keep it up and provide the links so that it's verified. It's one thing for us to say, hey, this is what we heard. It's another thing to say, click here to see exactly what happened. And to that end, we're going to be putting the ordinances up when we know that they've already opted in and written the ordinances. Maybe they're in draft forms from the agendas. You'll find those on the links. And also links to the townships and cities, so you know who the supervisors are, you know who the planning commissions are, you know the people involved, because the politics are such that your involvement as our clients and as our people that are looking to get licensed, it's a group effort to get these communities to opt in. They're not all for it right away. It takes some time to educate them, teach them what the new market will look like, teach them what the new products will look like, teach them why it'll be safe in their communities, and why safety standards are even put into it, so we know what the products are on the shelves, which is the whole discussion today regarding these safety compliance facilities. So we appreciate your help with that.
Yes, we very much appreciate that, because we're getting information from every available source, and we certainly want to vet it and verify it before we put it on the site. But this is becoming a really popular thing. We recognize that, and we are doing everything necessary in order to keep it up to date. We do have somebody full-time working on it, so it's not just like when I have some time I'm looking into it. We're putting resources into it, because we realize very quickly how resourceful it is, how much it's wanted, and how beneficial it can be to the industry, and not only for our patients, our clients, but for everyone.
So let's dive ahead and talk about where we're headed with these facility licenses, in particular safety compliance. So, we've already heard from the state licensing board that our rules are being promulgated, and one, of course, the ongoing concerns we have are what will the rules be. And, of course, there's an upcoming public meeting on the 21st. It'll be the second of the, I think, 3 or 4 that the board is going to be offering us.
August 21st?
Yeah, week from Monday. And, we're hoping that they're going to start to really kind of give us some direction on what we'll see. But we do know, just from conversations with some of the administrators within LARA, that, they're looking at a hybrid between Oregon, Washington, and Colorado. And, there's a lot of interaction, and Oregon has some great safety compliance things. So as we look at their rules, it does provide a really good framework of understanding that we're going to probably be looking at batches. In other words, the growers will have to set aside a certain amount of product, and then the testing lab will pull its own portion out of that product to test. And they can decide wherever within that, batch they want to grab a flower to put through the machine. And so we're going to see some rules that dictate how much that batch will be or how sizable it'll be. And similarly, the way food products will be tested. So these labs will decide for themselves where in the flower they want to grab the product to be tested, not necessarily the operator saying, here, try this little bud. It's going to come out perfect. And so, again, layering in these safety rules, and I think that's going to be something, again, that operators are going to have to get used to, and it's just going to become part of the norm, as it is out west.
Yeah, and it's interestingly enough that other states out west started their testing programs allowing the growers themselves to identify what parts of their batches are going to be tested, and that didn't work out because later on, proficiency testing and another types of testing was done in order to verify it at the point of sale, and then it was discovered that the cannabis that was being sold did test positive for things that weren't supposed to be there, and it ended up making a big problem. And so I'm certain that the state of Michigan is going to learn from that and ensure that growers themselves are not going to be responsible for identifying their own lots or their own samples that are going to be tested. There is going to be either the testing facility themselves or even state officials that come in and identify exactly what's going to be tested, and at different stages. I mean, so there should be testing. I believe that many believe that there should be testing at different stages of the plant cycle, and then at cultivation, and then at the point of perhaps at somewhere in processing, and then at the point of sale. Multiple points of testing to ensure that at every stage that the cannabis that is being sold in whatever form is going to be safe. And also that's going to ensure something that we don't want to happen, which happened in Colorado, where the cannabis from the grower had gotten through its testing, it had gone to a processor who then processed it into a lot of different products, and then it got to the point of sale, and then the Denver Post went and did their own testing and found that it tested for banned or unlawful substances, the content of the substances, to the degree that millions of dollars of product was then recalled, and that disrupted. It was a huge disruption of the industry. That caused some businesses to be able to shut their doors. They couldn't sustain the damage that was caused because of it. So the state of Michigan has to do everything necessary to ensure something like that doesn't happen.
Well, and one of the benefits that we have is hindsight. And, and listening to the administrators talk about how they've been working with other states and their counterparts in other states to help promulgate these rules, they do have the benefit of hindsight now and asking the state of Colorado, hey, if you can start over, what would you do differently? What were the mistakes that you guys made that we can learn from? And I'll say, just in the conversations we've had with the administrators, it's nice to see that that's the effort that's been made even long before the board was ever put together. We knew that as far back as March and April that those conversations were happening. So, what we do see now, though, is that as we move forward, and hopefully we're going to get all those best practices, but certainly there's going to be random testing. There's going to be the opportunity for our enforcement bureau to step in and say, we can just pull something off the shelf and go and test it. Those are going to be part of, I think, a very reasonable expectation of what we'll see in the rules. And if we see recalls, again, the reason for the safety compliance facility is also part of the seed to sale says we know where in the line it may have had the problem. Maybe it wasn't the grower that added the additive that caused the issue to be in that extract. It could have happened somewhere in the processing, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it happened before that. And we might have two licensees that are involved that have to decide. And so this testing through the chain will help verify and provide proof and protection to all the parties, and that's very important. But in continuing moving forward, though, as we see the changes that are made, the labs are going to be ever evolving. They're going to be adding new things to their tests. As with every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So as people try to create new nutritions to grow with, for instance, maybe there's going to be some substances that have to be tested to ensure they're safe. And so, but it doesn't mean the innovation shouldn't be there to try the new substances and make them organic and do things that might create a new way to increase the output and volumize what they're doing. So innovation is a huge part of it, and the safety compliance is the check and balance to that.
So that reminds me of pesticide testing, and I don't want to get too deep into this because it can get really complicated. But what you talked about, innovation, and what's going to happen is this: is the state's going to identify things that are banned as far as pesticides, right? But the state can only go on what they know of, and so what growers will do, and we've seen this before in other markets in other states, is that they'll just go out and find something else that is not on the banned list, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's safe. See, because what we're dealing with here is the Environmental Protection Agency, a federal agency who is responsible for identifying pesticides that are safe and for what uses. And so really federal law says that the label that's on a pesticide is the only thing that is supposed to be used for that particular product. And because it's a federal agency, they're not engaging in, they're not requiring these companies to engage in the pyrolysis testing, or meaning that the testing necessary to ensure that when somebody smokes it or inhales it, that it's safe. They're engaging in testing as to when somebody eats a pesticide, whether it's safe, but not smoking it. Not on cannabis anyway. They do engage in required testing for tobacco products, which does then become a basis upon which that states then identify what are banned pesticides, but not on cannabis products. And so this is one of the disconnects that the industry is going to be dealing with, and the state of Michigan is going to be dealing with, as to, well, how do we identify all these banned pesticides? And then we hope that Michigan's not going to do what Colorado did, which is create way too many pesticides that they're banning. And then it's going to significantly reduce the amount of available cannabis that may otherwise be safe, but because of an abundance of caution, they identify some pesticides that may be safe, but they just want to make sure that the cannabis is safe, and so they put it on this list, and then all of this cannabis comes off the market. And even though that it is in fact safe, there just hasn't been enough testing in order to ensure it. And it becomes a huge problem. And so this is going to be a big problem when we begin to roll out this regulatory system. I believe that the safety compliance facilities are going to have to be so much engaged in this process to ensure that the state doesn't place these restrictions at a high of a level, so that a lot of these growers are going to be completely out of the market because of the manner in which that they're choosing to grow, which very well may be safe, but the state is going to try to just be cautious and put too many things on the list. And so that is going to be an issue, and something that I know that the safety compliance facilities is going to be looking at. Iron Labs is going to be looking at it. I'm going to be looking at it to ensure very closely to ensure that we have some normalcy in the market, at the same time have some safety as well.
And that's another reason why I think that a lot of the licensees should view themselves as partners with one another in this industry. If you're trying to innovate and you're a grower, you can go and test your product. You can go to the lab and say, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Let's test it and see how it makes sure that it comes in, compliant. Cutting corners is not going to be the best way to, grow your business in this industry. Cutting the corners is going to be the part where the state catches you very quickly. And so if you think you got the angle on something because you got something new that isn't on that list but might end up proving itself to be a poison of some kind that shouldn't have been there, it's not to say that trying it, at least from the onset, is banned. Because if it isn't there, maybe it is a good product. Maybe it's something new to the market we hadn't seen before. That's how innovation happens. In the same vein, test it. Use these facilities as the backbone. They're your partner to ensure that what you're doing before you grow 1,100 of these plants, while you have a small enough sample, you can go and test it and make sure and certify what you're doing, and then continue to do that through the stages. And that's another way that you can partner with these safety compliance labs, so it's not only about the one batch at the one time whenever you're required to do it. Maybe there's actually some reason to work with them on innovative products. And that's, again, how these licenses will operate. This lab will be independent. It has to be. The safety compliant facility can't have any interest. No owner of that facility will have any interest in anything else to do in the industry. And as a result of that, it's going to give them that certification, that independence that really allows them to give their real opinion, because they're not motivated by the percentage of interest they have in a grower or whatever. And I think that's going to be very important, because it's okay to try something. If it doesn't work, move on to the next thing. And in the same vein, if it's working, maybe you can continue to monetize that and provide a new pick or axe to the industry. That could be really where your innovation comes from. And there's a lot of different products that we've seen in the agricultural industry that came out from farmers' efforts of trying new things. And so there's no discouragement of that. Just use the testing facility smartly.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap up, but I see, Rob Anderson, you have made a very excellent point that I'd like to point out. What can licensees or prospective licensees do in order to ensure that the testing is going to be robust, and it's going to ensure a better product for the entire industry? And first, I'd say that the growing facilities have to be designed properly, and they have to be designed with environmental considerations in mind. I advise my growing clients, when they're designing their facilities, that they should do so with the utilization of an environmental engineer, because just because you know how to grow 72 doesn't mean with a regular humidity doesn't mean that you can create that same facility when it's 1,500 plants. An environmental engineer, somebody that has that type of expertise, can ensure that you do have the necessary equipment in order to make sure that there's no spots within your facility that is going to have some problems, so that then it grows from there, and then it creates a situation that your entire valuable crop, which is in jeopardy. And then what growers do is they try to save it, because they're looking at all the money they're about to lose, and the next thing you know, they're cutting corners, and then they're using things they're not supposed to use. And so designing your facility is very important.
Can I just make one point to dovetail on that? A lot of these facilities are being buildings that are retrofitted for larger grow operations, meaning they've been there for years. They weren't built by these people that just purchased them. Some will be, but those that are retrofitted, this is very important. You don't know what the long-standing environmentals were in that building. You don't know what how good it will be for your plants in that building until you have an engineer go in there and help you decide the various levels and everything. And as you're retrofitting it, it's a very important cog to make sure that you set up correctly the first time. It's a worthwhile expense.
Yeah, the first time. Do not have to go back and then fix it when you realize that you've done something, or you've not designed it properly, because that's going to cost you a lot more than taking care of it in the first place. And that's super important. Do it now. Also, I wanted to recommend that you engage in chemical testing now and microbiological testing now to ensure that the product that you're creating, even just caregivers, even in small numbers of plants, there should be more testing. I think every caregiver should be testing. We have a caregiver compliance manual which has a chemical testing protocol that I wrote that ensures that you're testing. That way, you know what you're growing. Don't just test for potency. The amount of THC within your flower and your product is not the most important thing. It is something that you should know in order to develop your methods, but you have to test for everything. Don't be scared of it. Embrace it, and develop that relationship with your laboratory now, so that when it does come time for mandatory testing, you've already got a relationship. You already got a working relationship with somebody that hopefully that you have used and trust and know. You know they're scientists. You've seen their facility. You know their experience. You know their accreditation. Develop that relationship now.
And as you scale up your process, this is already done. If you scale up first and then find out later that you have an error in the ways of your growing method, it might derail the whole thing and have to start all over again. So just like we're talking when we start the building refabrication, look at it from an environmental perspective. As you're growing here and you're thinking of scaling, make sure the small version of it works, and then go from there. And I think that that'll be some good advice for people to not have to make a 180 U-turn halfway through the growth cycle for a mistake they could have caught early on. The safety lab is your partner to help fix that.
I'm super excited for what's going to happen in our industry, especially with regard to chemical testing. So we're going to wrap up today. Thank you for watching. And I think next week we got to move on to the next license, which we haven't discussed yet, right? Which is secure transportation.
Yeah, transportation.
Yeah.
So that'll be a really interesting one. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll look forward to seeing you next week on Cannabis Live. I'm Craig Randolph.
I'm Barton Morris.
Thank you. Have a great week.